2022 in the farming world was crazy.
It's clear this year's crops are better than last year's.
We have the best crop certainly in the last 10 years.
Record soybean yield.
Prices of corn and soybean have risen to near record level.
And that's the highest they've been in nearly 8 years.
There's just one problem.
U.S. farmers are likely to plant the most expensive corn crop in history amid surging input costs.
We've seen bottom line costs up to triple.
The real question is, what does this actually mean for farmers? Because if we don't have farmers, we don't eat. If we don't eat, I'm gonna have a really busy month of digging graves. You know, if we got a bunch of farmers together to not produce any crops and then a bunch of people, I just figured out a new business plan. I have two main responsibilities on our farm. I am the operations guy, so anything new that we would like to try, the future stuff of the farm, how are we gonna get there? Who are we gonna need to get there? What are we going to need to get there? Those are all responsibilities that I take upon my shoulders. I'm also the financial guy, so any dollar that passes through the farm comes through me. If we bought seed, I know about it. If we bought new tires for the car, I know about it. If we broke something and we didn't tell me about it, I find out about it, because I'm the money guy. Tomorrow I have a meeting with Les.
Hello, my name is Les. I'm a lender for GNB Bank.
In other words, Les is my money guy. So here's me needing some input money for seed, fertilizer, and chemicals. The problem is, I don't have any money. So I go to the bank and I say, hey, I need $1,000 for seed, fertilizer, and chemicals. Can I borrow that? They say, that's fine, but we're gonna set you up on a line of credit account, and that's gonna cost you 8.5% interest. So I end up giving the bank an old IOU, and they give me the $1,000. I plant my crop and it turns into grain, and so now I have $1,200 worth of grain. Now I have some cold hard cash. Hey Cole, remember that IOU you gave us? Okay, here's your $1,000 back. Man, I'd like to have that $1,000, but at least I still have $200. Interest, please. So I ended up paying the bank back their original $1,000, plus I paid them their 8.5% interest, which was $85. So then now I'm left over with $115 in profit. So in order for me to get to that asking point, I need to come together with a plan to give to Les. We call these cash flow predictions. So I'm gonna sit down right now and I'm going to make my 2023 cash flow predictions, so that way we have something to present to Les. And hopefully he likes what he sees, because I'm not. Before we dive into the 2023 new financial projections, I have some historical data over the last 4 years from our farm. So in 2019, for seed, fertilizer, and chemicals, it cost $210 per acre. 2020, $202 an acre. 2021, $357 an acre. 2022, $546 an acre. During that same time period, crop insurance nearly doubled, going from $12 an acre to $13 to $17 to $22 an acre. Diesel fuel, gasoline, and LP went from $27, $24, $25 to $59 an acre. Repairs and supplies went from $53 to $67 to $90 to $76. We got a discount right there. And hiring trucks to go from our grain bins to the processor went from $23 an acre to $16 an acre to $20 an acre to $36 an acre. And remember that money that we have to give to Les since he gave us money to use? Well, that went from $18 to $24 to $33 to $31. So from 2019 to 2022, nearly every single aspect of farming has nearly doubled, if not more than doubled. And that's excluding payroll taxes, labor, land rent, real estate taxes, property insurance, utilities, professional fees, dues, and miscellaneous items, aka food from Casey's. And those can easily range to an extra $400 to $600 per acre. So over the last few years, that's what's happened. Things have just keep going up and up and up and up. So here we are today. Les just called. He's ready to have our meeting. We're gonna present our 2023 projections of what stuff is going to be. And hopefully, at the end of the meeting, Les will lend us $2 million. I honestly don't know how it's going to turn out. Projections aren't looking very good. You know, Les could have picked a warmer day to come. Sweet, we got warm waters.
Tried to warm them on the way down.
Based off my current cash flow model, I'm showing we're gonna need a little bit over $2 million. If our projections show that that is feasible, is that something you can do for us?
Oh yes, absolutely. And then if something goes wrong with that whole plan at that time, then we'd have to figure out what to do with that remaining debt if you can't pay it back at the end of the crop season. If you're short, you have equity and other assets such as land and machinery. All of our loans go into a risk rating scale. And so the higher risk you are, you might pay a little more interest than the guy that rates better on that scale.
So once we get done here today, we'll have a pretty good direction right from your computer right now. So live feedback?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might be a little optimistic going into this one. Visit with Les, I'm going to show how impactful interest can be. So then the next year rolls around, I still need my $1,000 for seed, fertilizer, and chemicals, but the good news is I have $115, so now I only need to ask the bank for $885 at 8.5% interest rate. So I plant my crop, I raise it into grain again, and then now we have our $1,200 back sitting in the bin. But this time, instead of paying 8.5% interest on $1,000, we're only paying 8.5% interest on $885. So instead of costing $85, this is going to cost $75. So we end up selling our grain and collecting our $1,200. Right off the top, we're gonna take back our $115 that we originally invested. And then we're gonna pay the bank back the principal of $885. So now we're left with our $200 again. But this time, since we borrowed $885 instead of $1,000, we only have to pay them $75 in interest instead of $85 in interest. So that means this year, we get to keep an extra $10. So last year we made $115. Now we've made $125 since we paid $10 less in interest. So next year rolls around, we need our $1,000 for our seed, fertilizer, and chemicals. We have $240 of our own cash now, so now we only need to borrow $760 from the bank at 8.5%. So then this year we'd owe the bank only $65 and we'd get to keep $135, and then we just keep investing that back into the farm, and then year over year we just keep paying less and less in interest as we have to borrow less and less money. Then we get to take more and more home. But this example of borrowing 100% of our working capital, it will take us 8 years of reinvesting all of our net profits back into the operation before we're finally operating on 100% our money. During that process, we will spend $359 on interest, and then we'll have a net return of $1,241. So 22.5% of our income went back to the bank in interest. Where things start to get fun is where we don't have to borrow any money anymore. So now that we don't need the bank, I have my own $1,000. I plant a crop, I raise it, it turns into grain. So now we have our $1,200 sitting in the bin. It's gonna cost $1,000 next year to plant our crop. So we're just gonna put that money back into our account because we know we need it to plant a crop. But now we're left with the $200. We don't have to pay interest to anybody. Now I'm starting to look at some fields and I'm like, man, we're lacking some fertility on this farm. We need some field tile on that farm. That's really impacting our yields. So we invest this $200 into our operation and we make a return of 8.5%. So now the next year rolls around, we turn our $200 into $217. We reinvest this into more field tile and more fertility at an 8.5% rate of return. And then next year we have $235 and then reinvest that at an 8.5% rate of return. And now we have $255, then $276, $300, $325, $353. And this will just continue year after year after year of reinvesting that. It'll just keep getting larger and larger and larger. This growing year-over-year effect is what they call compound interest. Compound interest is extremely powerful. For example, when we did not have to use the bank after 8 years, we would have had $2,161. Well, during that same time period, when we were borrowing money from the bank, we would have $1,241. So the difference between paying 8.5% interest to the bank versus paying ourselves 8.5% interest every year is a 74% difference in money after the end of 8 years. So what's that do over 50 years? So with the first example, we started with absolutely no money, and then all the profit we made, we reinvested back in, so we were borrowing less from the bank. That took 8 years before we were financing everything on our own. Versus the example where we started just financing on our own right from the get-go. After 50 years, there is a $54,000 difference between how much money you would have. Well, that just shows the power of we want to get self-financing as soon as we possibly can because the returns are astronomical. Right now, our farm is in the situation where we borrow money from the bank. We have been taking our profits that we've been making over the years and we've been continually trying to whittle this number down as small as we can. So we're still on that step. What I'm trying to be very careful with is when we do borrow this money and the money that we have left over, I want to be spending this money to be going back into the operation to be providing a return. I don't want to be buying Ferraris and Lamborghinis and lake houses and stuff with this money because otherwise that money's gone and then we're back in the same boat where We just have the bank lending us the money, and we're not actually getting ahead anywhere. The Lamborghinis and the lake houses, that's a future down the road thing once we've established money coming in, providing a good return for us, getting us out of the line of credit from the bank. Then we're in a lot stronger financial position. Then maybe at that time we can afford to do something like that. But while we're still borrowing money from the bank, to me, spending the money that we make as profit and just blowing it on random stuff, probably not the most wise decision. We're doing an oversimplistic generalization of what we're trying to do because our inputs are not always going to be $1,000. Sometimes they're gonna be $1,100, $1,200, $1,500, $700. We don't know. Same thing with the money that we get in coming from grain. It's not always $1,200. Could be $1,100, could be $1,000, could be $500. We don't know. So this is where our cash flow prediction models and the less come into play.
All right, Cole, I think it's time to go.
Well, we're all laughing right now, but the cash flow numbers, at least the projections, are not looking promising. We're showing a negative across the farm on virtually every level. So I guess my question is, are we eligible for this loan?
Absolutely.
What happens if we hit these projected numbers, like spot on the head, which is basically showing us losing like multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars?
That's actually just part of farming. That's going to happen, and so farmers have to live a somewhat conservative lifestyle if worse comes to worse.
We're not going to get you knocking on the door in an FBI suit, are we?
Oh, probably not. I don't own an FBI suit, so you're in luck.
Les's projections came in worse than I had initially anticipated because I was using a $6.25 corn price and a $14.50 soybean price, while Les used a $5.40 corn price and an $11.70 soybean price. Using Les's projection, we'd have a total revenue of $1,719,000, but using my projections, we'd have a total revenue of $2,047,000, and that's like a $300,000 difference. So based off our projections, if we use Les's numbers and we have an average yielding year, we're going to lose $430,507.38. $430,000 loss is not good. Now mind you, we are using conservative numbers, but the bank just wants to make sure, okay, if things go bad up to the point where crop insurance is going to kick into play, then we just want to make sure we're getting our money back. So that's really all the bank cares about. They just want to make sure that they're getting their money, and then we're just kind of on our own after that. But the $430,000 loss is not ideal. That's really bad for the farm, but it would not bankrupt the farm, and here's why. Over the years, we've been able to get the farm into a position where we borrow half of our inputs from the bank, and then we're able to self-finance the other half. So in the case of the $430,000, we'll just call that $430, if we lost that, basically the bank would just say, hey, don't worry about it. We'll just lend you the money next year. And then we go back into that 8.5% cycle and we kind of start back over. So handing the bank back over this money would not really be ideal. It would at least keep us where, hey, our head's still above water. We don't actually still owe the bank anything else. So we're still staying in business. We just don't have the working capital that we used to. We rely heavier on debt. And the more debt we have, the more risky we are as a farm. And then if you have another one of these $430,000 loss years, then that's when you start having to sell stuff. And then if you can't sell enough stuff, then that's when you sell everything and you're done. But we're gonna do our best to keep it like that, and we're aiming to do that. We don't wanna deal with the bank anymore. We wanna be our own bank. All in all, if prices stay up high and we have exceptional yields, we can have a good year on the farm. And that is ultimately what we want, but at this point we just don't know, and that is just the risk of farming. This has happened every year in farming since the beginning of farming. Why do farmers want to keep doing this if they know there's years where they can be losing money doing it?
They enjoy the lifestyle. They're their own boss. They get to work outside. They get to use equipment. There's not too many people in this world that control as many things as farmers control. Managing land, taking care of the land, saving it for the next generation.
It's not always super glorious and awesome. There are tough years, and there's years where you lose money, and there's years that are not fun. But what are we gonna do? Not eat? We've almost been in business 90 years now, so we've been able to make it through a lot of hard times. We're just gonna keep plugging forward. If you enjoyed the video and you learned something, I'd appreciate it if you check out the link in the description, pick up some Cornstar gear. We got a whole bunch of cool designs available, but that's all I got for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.